I want to talk about signs in the heavens. And in the Hebrew, what we call the zodiac, they would call the Mazzaroth. Now let me put your mind at ease. We're not getting into astrology. But it's just a matter of history that groups of stars have names. What's interesting that these names are almost the same in all cultures and have been so for thousands, more than 4,000 years. So they're a convenient way of speaking of, if I can mix a metaphor here, geography. If I tell you that there's a star in Andromeda, or near Andromeda, or whatever, astronomers know where to look. You follow me? They're geographically. There are 12 classical clusters, constellations, that are on the ecliptic. If we take the Earth and extend its equator, you've got a celestial equator. You also have the apparent path of the sun through the sky in a year. That's called the equinoctial collar, or more simply, the ecliptic. There are two places where the ecliptic crosses the celestial equator. We call those the equinoxes. That's when the days and nights are of equal length. When it's furthest north or south, that's the solstice, winter, solar solstice. Now, our days are determined by where the sun is apparently in the path. It's actually where the Earth is, but you know what I'm talking about. Okay, these 12 constellations that are on the ecliptic have names, and we would call them the zodiac. By the way, first let's step back a minute. Do you realize how many stars there are in the universe? There are hundreds and hundreds of billions, so much so that there's no number I could give you that we could even relate to in terms of galaxies and so forth. But here's the mind-blowing part. The next time you run into that, at a planetarium show or in a book on astronomy, realize that every one of those stars has a name. You know, when you start thinking about that, that's wild. Psalm 147, verse 4, and in Isaiah 40:26, God calls them each by name. Wow. Let me tell you, I wish we knew more of the names. We know a few of them, and what few we know are absolutely stunning. All the stars have a name. Now, what we call the zodiac, that's from the Greek zodiakos, which comes from a Hebrew root, which comes from Sanskrit, but means sodi. It means the way. Now, most astronomy books assume that it's called the way because that's the way of the sun. It's the path of the sun. Having studied this at some length, I'm thoroughly convinced that this term is being used exactly the same way as it is in the book of Acts. It's an allusion to God's plan of redemption. God's plan of redemption. One of the earliest zodiacs we know of is in the Temple of Dendera in Egypt. It's about 2000 BC. And it's interesting how when we find other zodiacs, they're all derivative of the same kind of name, same kind of concepts. The Temple of Dendera is in Egypt, and it too has all these colorful types of appendages to the classical signs of the zodiac. Now, what most people don't realize that by the way, the 12 signs of the zodiac are linked to each of the 12 tribes of Israel. I'm going to leave that out for this discussion because we can't possibly even get into all of this, but something you do need to know, we're going to start with Virgo. It starts with Virgo, ends up with Leo. That's the cycle. So how do you know where to start? Because of the Sphinx in Egypt, the head of the woman and the body of the lion. And the word Sphinx means the binding together. But let's get on with this. Virgo the Virgin, we've all heard about that. What you may not realize, for each of the 12 constellations, there are 3 closely associated with it. They're not on the ecliptic, but they're nearby. They're called decans. Now, the decans for the Virgin are Coma the infant. Now, that's weird. Why would a virgin have an infant? Think about it. It means the desired one, incidentally. Centaurus is a dart piercing a victim. Booty is the great shepherd and harvester. The next major constellation is Libra, which means the scales. And the three decans for it are the cross, the victim, and the crown. That's kind of interesting. Then you have Scorpio, as we often hear taught, which is serpent's the serpent, no surprise. Orpheus, which wrestles with the serpent. And when he wrestles with the serpent's biting him on one heel, but he's got his foot on its head. Does that ring familiar to you? It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Hercules, the mighty man. Sagittarius has Lyra the eagle holding a lyre, an altar, Draco the dragon, the old serpent. Capricornus has an arrow, an eagle, and a dolphin, and Aquarius has a southern fish, a winged horse, and a swan. Pisces has the band, Andromeda is the woman in chains, and Cephas the crowned king. Aries has Cassiopeia. These are all the deacons. The woman enthroned, we all know that's that bent W that's near the pole star. The sea monster who was bound by a lamb, and Perseus, an armed mighty man. And then Taurus has Orion, the glorious prince, Orion's river, and a shepherd. Gemini has the hare, and two dogs, the major dog, Sirius, the great dog, and Procyon, the minor one. And Cancer has Ursa Minor, Ursa Major, the lesser and greater sheepfold, and Argo, the ship. And then the last one is Leo, who has the fleeing serpent, the cup of wrath, and the bird of doom. Now, these are all embellished with colorful stories that are very similar in most cultures throughout thousands of years, slightly different here and there. But let me tell you what everybody gets told that's not true. Everybody says, well, these are pictures, and they've built stories around the pictures because that's the way they look to them up there. Well, that's ridiculous. Go out at night sky and look at Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia looks like a W. It's just opposite the pole star. And there's no way, it's a W. There's no way it looks like a woman chained to a chair holding an ear of corn. I mean, you know, come on. But it's consistent. The story's consistent. The cluster of the stars has nothing to do with the pictures that are associated with them. That's something obvious just by looking at the pictures. What most people don't know, including most astronomers, is where you get the story is by knowing the names of the stars in the order of their brightness. When you know the names of the stars in the order of their brightness, you can put together the story that originally was told about it and the pictures to remind you of the story, not the stars. You with me? It's a mnemonic that you teach kids with. You know, if you're teaching the piano, the spaces are F-A-C-E, right? No, there's no face there, but you use that as a way, you know, F-A-C, you know, whatever. It's a mnemonic, right? We all use mnemonics, right? There are many scholars that believe they were the mnemonics that Adam and Enoch taught their kids, God's plan of redemption. And let's see what we can find out. The first one is Virgo. That's the Virgin, no problem there. Let's turn around a little bit and take a look at it. The primary star, Alpha being the brightest star, is Spica, which means ear of corn. The Hebrew name for this star isn't Spica. That's the one that's handed down through the Babylonian Greek traditions. That's the one the astronomers use. The Hebrew name for that is Semek, which means branch. But here's the interesting thing. There are 20 different Hebrew words translated branch. Only Tzemek is used exclusively of the Messiah in Jeremiah and Zechariah and twice, and in Isaiah and so forth. Now, something else you should notice, I don't think I earmarked it here in my notes. You notice what she's holding in her left hand. She's got a branch in one hand and an ear of, and grain in the other. And the branch and the grain of corn, remember John, see the branch is in her right hand and an ear of corn in her left. From this and a lot of deacons that surround her, she's the promised seed of the woman. She's the virgin that will give birth to the child that will be the Redeemer. The branch, of course, speaks of the Messiah, and the ear of corn, Jesus explains for us in John 12, unless the corn die, it will not bring life and so forth. The next one is Libra, the scales. Well, the Hebrew name for this constellation is Monzanaim, meaning the scales or weighing. And the Arabic name, many of the names, we don't have the Hebrew names, but we do have the Arabs have a very active astronomy because that's the way they navigate on the desert. And so many of these names we have the Arabic, not the Hebrew for. Al-Zabina, purchase or redemption is what it means. The Coptics call it Lambadia, the station of propitiation. The Latin is where we get the Libra for weighing. The brightest star is Zubin al-Ganubi, which means the price that's deficient. And the next brightest star is Zubin al-Kameli, which means the price that covers. See, someone is short and somebody else covers for us. That beginning to sound familiar? Revelation 5, Psalm 49, so on. And the third one is Gamma Zubin al-Akrab. That's the price of conflict. And it's pointing towards Centaurus and the victim that's slain. The deacons. The deacons here are the cross. Ooh, that's interesting. The Hebrew Adam cut off. The lupus or victim slain. And the Hebrew name here is Asidah, which means to be slain. The Arabic is Asidatan, which means to be slain. Egyptian name is interesting. It's Surah for this. It's a lamb. I think that's kind of interesting. And then the crown is the other deacon that's associated with the Libra, the crown that's bestowed. And in the Hebrew name for it is Atara, the royal crown. And we could go on and on with this. I won't. I'll show you one I think is really interesting. And this is the one where the wrestler is wrestling with a serpent, and his one foot is being bitten by the serpent, and the other foot is on Scorpio's head. So I think that's kind of fun. And this all climaxes at the end with Leo, the lion. And the Hebrew name is Ariah, the lion. And of course, this lion is associated with the tribe of Judah. It's a tribal standard. It's interesting that the brightest star there is Regulus in this constellation, which is treading underfoot. Deneb is the judge cometh. Deneb Alisad is the judge shall reign. And the deacons associated with him are the fleeing serpent, the cup of wrath, or cup of fire, Corvus the raven. So these are the constellations that we see. And any place you find some writing about this, unless it's been unusually enlightened, it'll carry with it the baggage of the old mythology from Greek and Egypt and what have you. But let's take a look at the message. I'm compressing several hours, if I go through all of these, to give you the message that this has. We have Virgo, the virgin, which represents the seed of the woman. This is the constellation of the three deacons. Seed of the woman, Coma is the desire of nations, the man of double nature and humiliation, and the exalted shepherd and harvester. All are carried by the constellation of Virgo and the three deacons that are associated with it. Libra is the price to be paid and the cross to be endured, the victim that was slain, and the crown that is purchased. And this gets kind of interesting. Scorpio speaks of the conflict, the serpent's coils, the struggle with the enemy, and the toiling of the vanquisher of evil. Sagittarius speaks of the double-natured one triumphing. He gladdens the heavens, he builds fires of punishment, he casts down the dragon. Capricornus, life out of death, the arrow of God, pierced and failing, springing up again in abundant life. Aquarius, the life waters from on high, drinking in the heavenly food, carrying the good news, bearing aloft the cross over all the earth. You got the Southern Cross in here too. I won't get into that here. Pisces has the multiplication of the Redeemer's people, upheld and governed by the Lamb, intended bride bound and exposed, the bridegroom exalted. Aries has the Lamb found worthy, the bride released and be making ready, Satan bound, and the breaker triumphing. Taurus, the invincible ruler has come, the sublime vanquisher, the river of judgment, the all-ruling shepherd. Gemini has the marriage of the Lamb, the enemy trodden down, the prince coming in glory, and his princely following. You get to what we call Cancer, the possession secured. It speaks of two folds, the lesser fold, the church of the firstborn, and the greater fold, Israel, sevenfolding into an everlasting kingdom. And the final one, of course, is Leo the lion, the king rending, the serpent fleeing, the bowl of wrath upon him, his carcass devoured. Now, the classic study on this is by E.W. Bullinger, called the Gospel in the Stars. Also, J.A. Seiss, before the Civil War, wrote a book on this. They're probably the two most reliable ones. I have about 4 or 5 of them. Most of them are echoes of much of the same thing. Plus, some. The big trick is to try to get some of the missing names of stars identified. And so, on the one hand, this is quite conjectural and very controversial. There are many Bible teachers think that this is way out in left field. And on the other hand, it's my view that there is enough here that seems for real to respect it. There are many things in here that are still, we're filling in blanks that we don't really have enough of the names of some of the stars to justify some of the things it said. But I wanted to show it to you because of what the Lord, because of this whole business, that the stars were put there for signs.